I expected this game to be a broken pile of hot garbage based on all the reviews I read. That said, on this channel I ignore reviews in an attempt to give you my real perspective, and I've got to say I'm very impressed with this game overall, even with all the jank in the mechanics, so let's start with that. Starting out with one of the premier features of this game, you have parkour, and it is fun. You can slide, wall run, and vault over obstacles all with ease, and if I'm being genuine, this is one of the absolute smoothest parkour experiences I've had in VR. The climbing itself is a bit jank, but I never found myself in a spot where taking my time wasn't an option for climbing. You feel fast and agile, and the more you play, the more natural these mechanics feel. You get these gloves pretty early on in the game that lets you interact with all kinds of stuff, and the way you'll be swinging from things will have you feeling like Spider-Man. Throw in just a bit of polish and this is the experience I expect from a AAA VR Spider-Man game. Speaking of polish, apparently the developers are on it. They released a statement on August 9th acknowledging that the launch and overall experience wasn't as smooth as they hoped. They went on to apologize and promise to keep working on the game until it's polished, spotless. They even released a roadmap outlining visual updates, fixes, and new game modes. That's a pretty bold commitment, and if they follow through, I'm going to be very impressed with this developer. That said, this game is fun, but it's not without its fair share of bugs. I for one ran into an invisible wall during a vehicle chase scene, and it wouldn't go away, causing me to fail the mission. On the topic of vehicles though, just like the parkour, the three-wheeler dune bikes control amazingly. Outside of simulators, I have never had a better vehicle controlling experience in VR. Combined with the parkour, I can tell you for a fact that this game is not getting the credit it deserves. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the graphics. The target here is clearly for a low poly artistic look, which as you'd expect isn't winning any graphics awards. It's not the greatest looking game, but I assure you, in my personal experience, the content quality of a VR game has a direct impact on how much you notice the graphics. This low poly approach was clearly intentional and it gives the game an almost minimalistic vibe that's kind of charming. That said, like the mechanics, these graphics aren't without their quirks. One thing you might notice is the lighting, or specifically how it can look a bit off in some areas. There are moments where environments look darker than they should, almost like someone flipped a switch and forgot to turn it back on. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's noticeable. I personally haven't encountered anything game-breaking in terms of visuals, but it can be a bit jarring, especially when you're trying to stay immersed in the world. And speaking of jarring things that have a direct effect on immersion, this game has a noticeable amount of pop-in. Pop-in happens because the game is only supposed to render what's directly in your line of sight to reduce strain on your gaming hardware. I don't have footage of this because my headset records my left eye and the pop-ins only occurred in the far corner of my right. It's not enough to absolutely ruin the game, but it's enough to break immersion from time to time. For me, the graphics are a mixed bag because I don't like the pop-in or the way the darker areas look, but I love the art style here, almost as much as I love the theme. Right off the bat, I can tell you that the theme's execution isn't amazing, but the vibe of the theme is AAA quality. After the opening mission that acts as both a plot point and a tutorial, you step into the shoes of a Spec Ops soldier. You are dropped onto a prison planet with the mission of taking down a warlord, all for the sake of restoring relative order. The way you're immersed and dropped onto this planet in such an interactive yet cinematic way blew my mind. It's so good in fact that I briefly forgot about the bugs I encountered in the entertaining but long tutorial. The theme here really leans into that sense of chaos and danger you expect from a literal prison planet. Ruthless gangs at odds with each other fight for power and control for different areas of this barren wasteland. If you're into games that drop you in the middle of a back against the wall scenario, the burst definitely has you covered. It also delivers on the audio, which I flat out was not expecting. The voice acting from NPCs was alright, but the main character's voice acting was great.
You missed your LZ by a mile.
Lucky me. The stench of this place.
You really get a sense for what the person you're playing as is thinking and feeling. This doesn't just apply to the soldier you play as either. Without saying too much, you play as a chick in the prologue, and it's just as immersive as the soldier you play as most of the game.
Got it. Anything else?
Before you go, let's recall some of the basics, just in case.
If you insist.
The sound effects are pretty solid too. Everything sounds like it belongs in this harsh, unforgiving environment, and it helps build that tense atmosphere you expect in firefights. Throw in good music, and this game really surprised me in the audio department. The options here, like the audio, aren't bad either. The game gives you a fair amount of choices when it comes to tweaking your experience, but there's a big caveat we need to discuss. First, the good stuff though. The Burst offers full volume controls, which is always nice to see. You can adjust the levels for music, sound effects, and voices separately, so you can get the audio mix just how you like it. The graphics controls are pretty solid too, letting you fine-tune things like anti-aliasing and textures to make sure the game runs smoothly on your setup. These are the kind of basic options we expect from a good VR game, and the Burst delivers on that front. Here's the bad news. If you're someone who struggles with motion sickness in VR, you're going to want to approach this game with a lot of caution. While the game does offer some help like snap or smooth turning, it won't be enough to completely avoid that queasy feeling. This game has a lot of fast-paced action and movement, especially with the parkour and vehicle driving, which can be tough on players who don't have their VR legs, or even those who do but are sensitive to motion. To be fair, the only thing I can see them adding to improve this from inside the game would be movement vignette. For those who might not know, vignette is an effect that basically creates tunnel vision by blurring the edges of your screen during movement to reduce motion sickness. For what it's worth though, some action-heavy games make it impossible to account for everything, and this just happens to be one of those games. Overall though, the amount of options aren't bad, which brings me to this game's immersion score. If you've watched my videos before, thank you, and you know I score each of these categories discussed in the video to give you a point of comparison to other VR games you might have played. That said, mechanics gets a 3 out of 6. The gameplay here is very fun and engaging, but it's held back by a level of jank that can be hard to ignore. Graphics gets a 2 out of 6 because, let's face it, they aren't very good whether that's intentional or not. The theme, on the other hand, gets a 5 out of 6. The way this game puts you in the middle of everything kind of feels like an action movie. Audio also gets a 5 out of 6 because it was well beyond expectations for a VR indie game in 2024. And lastly, options gets a 4 out of 6 because it gives you almost everything you need to comfortably enjoy the game. All things considered, my experience wasn't nearly as bad as the reviews I've read, but that might be because I'm playing this game on PC using a Quest 3 as my PC VR headset. That said, this game has earned an immersion score of 4.5 out of 6. It's strange because $30 is the base price for a full-feature VR game, and while I don't feel like this game is worth that much, I don't regret buying it for the $27 I paid on sale. That said, if you like this video, you already know what button to hit and subscribe for more VR content before you watch one of these videos here. But until next time, stay immersed.